everybody. I want to welcome you to another success story. I have a series of webinars based on people who've read my books and have had an amazing experience by reading them. So today I want to welcome Nikki. And Nikki is an amazing person because she's volunteering on the book stall at the next London conference. So if you haven't signed up for the conference, please do so. You'll get to meet us either live in person or on streaming. And Nikki's going to be managing the bookstore. And because she was doing this, I got to meet her and hear about her story. And she's going to tell you a little bit about her experience with back and neck pain and how she came to read my book. So Nikki, so thank you so much for your time and for sharing your experience with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like what kind of symptoms you had, first of all?
Yeah, of course. So I guess I was struggling with back and neck pain probably for about 15 years. And it all manifested itself because I fell off a horse. And then I fell down the stairs in quite quick succession, actually. And I didn't realize at the time I'd sort of knocked my pelvis out of alignment. And then fast forward 10 years and I was in an increasingly sedentary office job. And I guess I just kind of went into crisis to the point I couldn't really move. And that started a journey with chiropractors and physios and I mean, all the kind of gadgets and things I tried, you know, things you can buy online. And
I know, yeah. Sounds like me.
Yeah, the number of pillows I have for different things is kind of ridiculous. And so, yes, I would say kind of daily musculoskeletal pain for the last 15 years, something like that. And I came across the principles about 7 years ago and started coach training actually, and have been on my own sort of journey ever since. And I could sort of see that my experience of pain was created in thought. I could see that component to it. And yet I lived with daily pain, and that was sort of what that was. I hadn't seen how much of a story I had about my physical body. And it dates right the way back to sort of childhood. You know, my pet family name was the runt of the litter. In a lovely way. We weren't being unkind. My dad was from a farming family, so it sort of makes sense. But there was this whole story about me being this undersized, malnourished, poorly, sickly baby that grew up. And so having kind of the accidents and then the pain, I had a lot of stories about what I thought I could and couldn't do, and a lot of limitations physically. And so I guess I kind of went on a bit of a journey, had some time out from work just by chance, and was able to kind of do a lot of processing and reflecting. And I saw this huge story that I'd made up around my body. And I mean, you've experienced this yourself, I'm sure. When you see something like that, suddenly this invisible mountain looked very visible, and then it disappeared, which was kind of great. But there was a bit of the puzzle I hadn't seen, and that was that everything we think we feel, right? We, you know, viscerally in our bodies. So I knew that frustrated, anxious, angry thinking led to feelings of frustration and anxiety, etc. See all of that connection. I just didn't realize that it also manifested itself physically in the body. And it wasn't until I sat down and read Painless, actually over the course of the weekend, because I had food poisoning, ironically, that I just read it. I know it's my birthday and I got food poisoning and all the plans were cancelled, and the book turned up at the right time, and I sat there and just read it through the course of the weekend. And I just hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen frustrated thinking. I didn't really realize that was me. And, you know, you talk about anger and frustration specifically. And I was like, wow, I do have a lot of frustrated thinking. And it makes sense, doesn't it, that if you're feeling frustrated, you do this. And when you're doing that internally in your body, of course, your muscle, everything gets sore, everything gets uncomfortable. So I hadn't twigged that you could experience that kind of thinking emotionally as well as physiologically.
Right.
You know, and when you talk in the book around the MRI scans and seeing pain move from being acute in the prefrontal cortex and back into the amygdala. And I come from sort of a world of healthcare medicine. That makes total sense. I just saw how it was protective. Like it looked, my mind thought it was protective.
Right.
And so it looks to me, chronic pain looks like emotional pain. It looks like habitual pain.
Yeah.
It just doesn't look real anymore.
Right.
And so it was probably a week after I read your book and I was like, oh, yeah, no pain.
Wow.
And yeah, no pain. And you have a little line in there, I think towards the end, sore but safe. And I was like, wow, that's a revelation, because pain was unsafe.
Yeah.
And then I found myself moving very gingerly.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes I say to myself, sore but safe, but it just doesn't feel like pain anymore. I can't really explain it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so excited to hear that, because it, you know, like it takes a lot of, as you know, it takes a lot of work to write a book. And when you hear people being affected by it and you know, improving their lives, it's like, it's such a rewarding experience. So I really appreciate you just sharing that for me, and hopefully it's inspiring and hopeful for the people listening.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to listen to you talk about the frustrating thinking, because I mean, I've been around the principles about the same amount of time, and I'm still just glimpsing just how anxious and frustrated I was, because I would have never described it that way, because either I was right, you know, I was right to be, you know, annoyed with that person because they did it wrong, you know, or annoyed with because they were late and they should have been on time, you know, what's the matter, you know. And so, and in a lot of the pain management books, they talk about suppressed rage and suppressed anger. And I wasn't, you know, I didn't feel rage and anger. We're English, we don't get like that, right? So frustration is such a great way to describe it, because I think for me there was this like level of frustration that was just kind of in the background of my life, in the background of my thinking, and it was just bubbling along, and it was kind of like normal, you know, just to get annoyed and frustrated. Like, I mean, I think of my mother, and she was brilliant at tutting.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Like she'd even watch the TV and she'd go like and I kind of picked that up from her. Like nothing was not good enough. Like I was spoiled, but you know, it just, if you just tried a little bit harder, if you just did it right, then it would be so much better, including myself, because I would notice when I hadn't done it right, or I said something stupid and I regret, why did I say that? And like you said, when you look at that kind of thinking, it's constantly sending messages to the brain that we're not, that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And the brain interprets that as danger.
Yeah.
And if it thinks I'm not safe, it thinks I'm in danger, then you're, like you said, you know, it's going to just get really tight and protective. So that's a really great way to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, frustration is just, it's fully loaded with judgment, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're judging the world, judging yourself, judging others. And you're right, I still catch it now. It wasn't that I saw the amount of frustration and judgment and it went away. It was just seeing how much there was enough to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, there's a habitual judgment is a lot to let go of. I mean, of course, things can fall away in an instant, but I still notice it. I'm still noticing. I woke up this morning and I was thinking about something that happened at work yesterday. I thought, wow, so much judgment there. Like I keep seeing it, like it's magical butterflies or something. And oh, there's another one. There's another one.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's so pervasive. And like you say, maybe it's, I mean, I recognize it in others. I see it in my own, you know, for example, but it's also kind of, I guess, a bit kind of cultural, right? And and it's what our brains do. They, you know, I don't have the voice of the inner critic anymore. That thankfully she left me some years ago now.
She's fired.
I know, like, oh yeah, not welcome here. Go away with your commentary. But that's what our brains do, don't they? I mean, they are commentating on everything.
Yeah.
And as much as I might not be self-commentating, it's recognizing how much commentary I still have around other things.
Yeah.
But it's and I think think I said to you, I had this time off and I happened to find myself writing a book about my experience. And as you said, there's a lot of work that goes into writing a book. And but I just knew it wasn't finished yet. So I mean, I'd finished it, I was laying it out, all the rest of it. But there was something where I was just like, something in me feels like it's not done yet. And then I read Painless, and then obviously I had this shift again. I was like, okay, done, full stop. Like it was complete for me. It was the missing bit of the jigsaw puzzle. For my own journey of the body and of pain and of all of that sort of thing. So I'm really.
Go on.
Well,
I was just going to say, so how would you say your life is different now? Because when we're in pain all the time, it restricts the things that we can do. It kind of, it's hard to be positive. It's, it kind of has, I know for me, it was like, I always felt like my back was weak and it could go out at any minute. So it kind of restricted, I don't know what I did, but it was kind of like a niggling thought in the back of my head that my body is weak and I have to take care of it. And now I don't feel like that. So I was just thinking, how would you describe how it's, even just the way you live your life now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one because I can feel how much stronger my body is than it used to be. And I think like motion is lotion is what my husband would say. He's a sports and clinical therapist. So I'm in a funny place where I'm reevaluating life and everything's kind of shifting, and I have got work to do to get this body back up conditioned and back up to where it is. But I think to your point, the biggest change is mental. Like I just don't have all of that. I have more energy. I don't have wasted thoughts on all of that kind of stuff. And if my muscles feel tight, I put heat on them. There's no story around it. Right. Whereas I would make a whole story about it. And will this ever go away? And, you've probably, been there in that same position. It's just like this endless story around your body. And now that's all gone. So there's so much more freedom. So I guess what I'm not clear on is what the physical journey is now, actually. So I think there's more to do. I sort of find myself, I'm so interested in this, and I'm really interested in people who have things like ME and other conditions where I just feel inherently like this is the solution. Right. And I know that you do a lot of work in that. And yeah, so I'm not, I'm in the unknown. I don't know, but I feel like there's something more that this body in the end will be doing.
Wow.
But I'm still slightly in that sedentary day job. So there's a little bit of a shift there. But the biggest thing is peace of mind. I just don't have this weight of thinking around.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And contraptions are gone. I just don't need.
Yeah. Don't need all that. Like I used to have a massage machine, and I'd have, all kinds of things and pillows, like you said. And I actually had an insight this weekend. I saw how in the past I never saw my body as any of my business. It was just these things that happened to me, and you go to the doctor, you go to the chiropractor, and I see now how I was doing a lot of things to kind of fix it, but like you said, the story, that's what's gone away. And I was thinking, I haven't done anything different to my back. It just feels stronger because I'm not feeling that frustrated thinking anymore. I'm not living in the story, because I had a story in my head that one of these days, when I have one of these flare-ups, it's not going to go away, and I'm not going to get the feeling back in my legs, and that will be it. And I will be paralyzed for the rest of my life. As an old lady, I'm going to be in a wheelchair, and that's it. And it's so nice, and who knows what's going to happen? I don't, but it's so nice not to live in that story anymore. And I think that's, like you said, it's kind of contributing to being healthy and in a good place right now, even if things aren't always, the way we want them to be.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I was at the chiropractor this morning, so I accidentally bumped my coccyx about 4 weeks ago. Ridiculous. But there's no story. Like, that would have set me back. That would have been a big deal. Oh, how long is this going to take? And, you know, there's just nothing. Like, okay, it hurts, you know, adjust the way you sit, be a bit careful, and then just carry on with life.
Right.
There's just so much freedom there, I think.
Yeah.
And I kind of see what you say. Like, I feel like I thought a lot about my body, but did I do much with it? No, I did a lot of thinking about it.
Right.
I had a lot of opinion about everything when it comes to the body. But I mean, like, we digest food, we don't get involved in that mentally. Right. We breathe and we don't get involved in that. Like, that's not our job. And I could see how I was thinking through everything. So, you know, food and weight, that it's all kind of mapped in for me. But it was so many rules around food, like what I could eat and how I could move and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's the mental energy, isn't it? It's a really hard one to, but when you just feel lighter and freer and able to get on with life. And I think, I don't really know what's next, but I just know, like, to me, it looks so clear that that chronic pain isn't real. That might sound really controversial, but that that's emotional pain, and if we can help people with that, to see that, then freedom's on the cards, and then there's possibility, right? Then there's opportunity. Yeah, and that's what I'm not clear about. Like, now I was always much more active, and then I've had this period where I haven't been, and I'm not sure what happens next.
But it's interesting.
Back to dancing,
right?
That kind of thing.
That sounds exciting, though. It's like, you can say, like, oh, I don't know what's next, but then you can say, like, I don't know what's next. You know?
But it's definitely the latter. It's like, ooh, anything's possible.
Yeah.
And the body is an amazing thing. The body has the ability to heal itself, but for us, interfering.
Right.
And I right. And I think that's really, you talk about the flight or flight mechanism in the book, and that makes total sense. Like, our body has an amazing mechanism for protection for a really short burst of time for something very real, like a tiger.
Yeah.
But to live like that day in, day out, you're just hammering your body with chemicals. I mean, it's not surprising there's a physiological response, and the body can't heal itself when it's being continually subjected to kind of trauma and danger. Just makes total sense. So
that's amazing. I'm so glad we got to talk about this, because if it weren't for the the conference and the bookstore, I wouldn't have known you had this great experience. So I really appreciate you sharing your story, because it's so hopeful. And that's, I think, one of the biggest gifts we can give people, is there's hope. Especially if people listening are in pain right now. It's a tough situation if it feels like it's never going to end. Like we certainly were there, but now there's hope that when you see that that it's so much of my stuff was created by that thinking and believing that thinking. And when I saw through the illusion of that, like you said, it just kind of like started to melt away. And for me, it was also IBS and allergies and all kinds of other things as well. It's such a hopeful story. So I really appreciate you sharing that today. And I'm really excited that I get to meet you in a couple of weeks. So I will be there in London, and we're going to enjoy the conference. So
great.
So thank you so much, Nikki. It was really appreciate your time and sharing your wonderful story. And I look forward to meeting you real soon.
Great.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.